Today I'm going to describe how I dry hop from the bottom of my MiniUni fermenter. This is the Brew Tools MiniUni 30 liter capacity, and it's inside my Bowman 7316 242 liter refrigerator. Fits quite well in there. In fact, I've also got the 40 liter version. There's enough headroom at the top for that to fit as well. On top of the fermenter, I've got a 4-inch adapter plate with NC connectors for the swimming dip tube and gas. I've got a PRV valve and a tri-clamp adapter. I like to connect my blow-off cane to the top of that, and I can open and close it as needed. To install this in the refrigerator, I had to make a rack so that you could get around that compressor hump in the back, which is pretty typical in most refrigerators. There's something at the bottom, a big hump where the compressor is located. And I just made a 30 millimeter aluminum channel rack here. Pretty simple, straightforward, and it allows good vertical access to the bottom of the tank and enough space down there to install the ball valve and other fittings that we're going to need for the dry hopper. Looking at the bottom of the tank, coming directly out of the tank, I've got a 2-inch 90-degree elbow. That goes into a 2-inch butterfly valve, a second 90-degree elbow, to which is attached the 2-inch sight glass. On top of the sight glass is the NC adapter plate for gas, and we won't be using the liquid valve and the PRV. If you want to add this to your MiniUni, this is basically the 2-inch dry hopper assembly with that valve. And you'll need to add two 90-degree elbows, 2 more clamps, and 2 more gaskets. For convenience sake, I've installed a shutoff valve close to where I will be working. That just makes it easier to turn the gas on and off as needed. That is connected to the top of the dry hopper. And you're also going to want easy access to that PRV, so I like to mount that towards the front. Now this is a test system. I've filled the tank with about 25 liters of water, and I'm going to pour in 150 grams of hop pellets. I've got a lot of Magnum hops laying around, so I'm going to go ahead and use those for this demonstration. So I'm not going to work extra clean here, but just as a general precaution, always make sure that everything is sanitized, cleaned, and sanitized before it's installed. Once it's built up like this, what we're going to do is add the hops and then purge out as much oxygen as possible, and then go ahead and begin the dry hopping process. One more note about the installation. This is basically the simplest way that I've come up with to install this dry hopper. If you wanted to make things a little bit easier, what you're going to see in a few minutes when we're dry hopping is that you're going to be pulling this PRV valve and liquid will come up into the chamber, into the sight glass. You don't want that to come out the PRV. If it does, it tends to clog the PRV, and you've got to open it up and clean it out. To buy yourself some more time when that's being done, you can install an extension tube on top, just a spool, a 2-inch spool, to get that PRV up higher and give you a little bit more time to react before anything comes out the top. You'll see what I mean when we get into it. So I've got 150 grams of Magnum hops. The pellets are pretty small, and I found that the smaller pellets tend to bind together more densely, make more of a hop cement. So if you're using larger pellets, you might get away with a little bit more, but I would not go over 150 grams. You don't want to risk just creating a sludge, a cement down there that really just compacts and doesn't push through at all. That's a big bummer, and it's a waste of hops. So do yourself a favor and just do a double dry hop if you're going to add more than 150 grams. So this is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to pour the hops into the chamber. I do remove the gasket when I'm doing this to keep the dust off. And I've just got a plastic funnel that I cut the bottom off to make a bigger opening. And one thing is, make sure that you've broken up any clumps. So before you've opened your hop package, taken it out, poured it out, just squeeze it in your hands, roll it around, try to break up those clumps as much as possible, because those clumps are going to add to any risk of blockage. If you end up with any hop dust on top, you just want to make sure you get that brushed off, cleaned off, and maybe spray some sanitizer on it before you close it up. Clamp the lid back on. I've already got the gas connected to this. Pressures, I usually set my regulator to about 1.5 bar. That's just a pressure I'm comfortable working with. You could go a little bit higher, but you don't really want to go up towards 2.5 bar. That's when this red valve is going to start to release. So I'd say the limit is about 2 bars, just to keep it on the safe side and avoid any annoyance. So when you go to purge the oxygen out, all you're going to do is pressurize the sight glass and then pull the PRV 4, 5, 6 times. And what you can also do, if you're very careful and you want to be more thorough, is to loosen this bottom clamp between the elbow and the valve and essentially create a leak in the system for gas to escape. And that will flush CO2 through the hop bed down there, through the elbow and out the bottom. You need to be careful when you do this. Don't open this more than maybe 2 turns, and hold the clamp together. Hold that, that swinging pin that's on there so that it doesn't come open, fall off, excuse me, and dump your hops all over the floor. And what you can do to assist this is wiggle this until you hear it. I can hear gas now, and I'm just holding it with very slight pressure to create that leak. Again, squeezing that clamp with my hand so that it's not accidentally going to open. And then close it back up. So the system is pressurized, it's purged. The tank is of course still closed, and now we're ready to start dry hopping. So what I recommend is, first of all, depressurize your MiniUni. Just pull that PRV on top. And I actually like to depressurize this. Oops, turn the gas off. Depressurize the dry hopper as well, just so that you don't have a, don't want to say explosive force of gas when this tank is open, but it can get a little bit loud. So just open the tank. There's no reason to try and shove the hops through and shoot it through with a CO2 injector, let's say. So that's open. The system theoretically could allow wort to come out of there and up into these hops. And let's see if we can get some of that water moving up. Sorry, it should be beer, but in this case it's a test, just water. And if you're lucky, just by pulling that PRV, you'll get beer up into the sight glass. Let me zoom in here just to show you. This is actually filled with fluid now. I don't really want to let that sit there too long right now, because I'm afraid that might just compact and glue together. So I want to try and get as good of a mixing done as possible here early in the process. Zoom back out so I can show you what we're going to do. And what we're going to do is try and work with pressurization and depressurization of this dry hop assembly to get movement between the tank and the sight glass. We want to push these hops into the tank and then mix them up by going back and forth. So I am just going to leave the tank open, and I'm going to turn the gas on and see if we can push that into the tank. I'm not sure how far it's going to get. That actually went pretty well. And pull the PRV, and you need to be careful here. Let me zoom in. You need to be careful, because when that water fills up, it can go pretty quick. And if it gets to the top, you're going to jam your PRV. It's going to get blocked. That's kind of a bummer. If that does happen, what you can do, turn your gas down low to maybe 1/2 bar, and close the tank so that you don't have pressure pushing beer up out of it. And just unscrew this. Unscrew your PRV, take a brush, brush it out, spray it with Sarsan, clear off any debris, and then put it back together. So it's not the end of the world, but it's kind of a pain, something you should try to avoid. So I'm just going to go and get this going back and forth in 2 directions, hopefully. Turn on the gas, turn off the gas, hold the PRV. So that is the mixing process in a nutshell. Just a couple tips. If you do get some blockage and nothing is moving, you're not sure what to do, this is just stuck, maybe there's no beer coming up or the hops aren't going out, something is blocked somewhere. A couple things you can do, first of all, is to depressurize the top of the tank, the top of the MiniUni, because the pressure will build up in the system over time, and you want to maximize the pressure differential between these 2 parts. So just purge your tank, your main tank. You can also activate the valve, open and close it a few times to see if that will get some of that blockage broken up. And you can, of course, also increase the pressure to the sight glass. So take it up to 2 bar, 2.3 bar, whatever it might take to really create enough force to push that through. I haven't had any permanent blockage yet, but again, I tried to push this with about 200 grams once, and it was much more difficult. You might have luck, but really save yourself some frustration and stick to about 150 grams. So I feel pretty good about the mixing right now. What I'm going to do is try and drain as much of this out of here as I can with the gas on, and then I'm going to close the valve to the tank so that most of that hop sediment stays on that side of the butterfly valve while we let it rest, so we don't get any clumpage built up down here in the elbow. So tank is closed. Hopefully most of our liquid and hops are drained out of the elbow and the sight glass, and I'm just going to turn the gas off and leave the system like this until I want to come and mix it up again. And I tend to do this mixing or rousing process maybe 3 or 4 times for the first day while I'm dry hopping before I cold crash. I like to think that getting these hops mixed up from time to time will increase the extraction of the hop aromas and oils. So, you know, you do what you like. If you get this to this stage and you're happy with that, you can disassemble and clean everything and let it go until you're ready to cold crash and fill your kegs or bottles, of course. If you're going to do a second dry hopping, maybe 150 grams isn't enough, or you want to do a double dry hop, you really could just depressurize the sight glass, remove the cap, pour in your hops, and then purge it again. Just, I would caution you that there may be beer liquid down in the bottom of this elbow. So if you go to loosen that clamp and try and get that leak going for the extra purging process, you're probably going to spray out a bunch of beer, and it kind of gets messy. So you might want to skip that step if you're just re-pouring in some hops. Otherwise, if you want to be really thorough, you could take this off, take off the elbow and the sight glass, take this assembly, clean it out, sanitize it, put it back on, and start from step 1 again. One other tip before I finish the video is just to remind you that you can also use this dry hop assembly as a yeast collection container. What I like to do when fermentation starts to slow down is open up this valve. Actually, what I do first is loosen this clamp just a little bit and rotate this forward. You want to be careful while you're doing this, of course, if the system is open, that it doesn't open up on you. So you're just going to rotate this and have it kind of pointing downwards. Tighten the clamp up. Now you can open up this valve and use this as a low point in the system to collect hopefully as much dead yeast and crud out of the system as possible. I like to get that out if I can as much as possible, just so that I'm not mixing that along with the hops when we're doing this mixing process, that we're not just bubbling up dead yeast through the system. I feel better about getting that out. So this is how I do it. When you're dumping it, close the tank and put a vessel, put a container, a Tupperware or something underneath here, because you're going to have a mess when you open this clamp to remove, or you can just remove this cap. Again, put a container underneath, open this cap, and hopefully that sludge will move its way out of there.